The nursing home smelled of disinfectant and despair. Sarah Johnson gripped the handles of her father's wheelchair a little too tightly as she pushed him down the sterile hallway. Her knuckles turned white, not from the physical effort, but from the emotional weight pressing down on her shoulders. "This is it, Dad," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Room 215. The nurse said it has a nice view of the garden." Frank Johnson said nothing. His weathered hands rested in his lap, motionless except for a slight tremor in his right index finger. At 68, he looked far older than his years, his once powerful frame now diminished, shoulders hunched beneath a cardigan that seemed 2 sizes too large. Sarah waited for some reaction. Anger, sadness, anything. But her father's face remained impassive, his eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance. This was the same maddening silence she'd endured for months now, ever since she told him she couldn't care for him at home anymore. "I've brought some of your things," she continued, moving around the small room, placing framed photographs on the dresser. "Your favorite sweater, your reading glasses, that old book you like." A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand, her smile professional and practiced. "Mr. Johnson, we're so happy to have you with us. I'm Nurse Martinez, and I'll be helping you get settled today." Frank nodded slightly, the closest thing to acknowledgement Sarah had seen all day. "I filled out most of the paperwork," Sarah told the nurse, "but there are still some forms that need signatures." "Of course, we can go over those at the desk when you're ready." The nurse's eyes conveyed what her words did not. "Whenever you're done saying goodbye." Goodbye. The word stuck in Sarah's throat like a pill too large to swallow. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Her father had always been the strong one, the provider, the steady foundation of their family. Frank Johnson, the man who never missed a day of work, who built custom furniture in his garage on weekends, who taught her to change a tire and check the oil in her first car. Now, he couldn't even stand without assistance. The accident 6 years ago had been bad enough, leaving him partially paralyzed and dependent on the wheelchair. But after Mom died last year, everything changed. Frank retreated into himself, barely speaking, refusing therapy, needing help with the most basic tasks. Sarah had tried, God knows she had tried, to handle it all. The daily care, the doctor's appointments, the medications, all while managing her own job and life. "Dad," she said softly, kneeling beside his wheelchair. "I know this isn't what either of us wanted, but I can't do it anymore. I'm not equipped, and you need professional care." She searched his face for understanding. "I'll visit often, every weekend, I promise." Frank finally turned to look at her, his blue eyes, so like her own, clouded with something she couldn't quite read. Was it resignation? Disappointment? For a moment, she thought he might finally speak, might say something to make this easier. Instead, he simply reached out and patted her hand once, then turned away again. Sarah stood up, suddenly desperate to leave, to escape the suffocating mix of guilt and relief washing over her. "I should get those forms signed," she said. "I'll come back in to say goodbye before I go." In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths. A young orderly pushing a medication cart gave her a sympathetic look as he passed. How many family members had he seen in this exact position, torn between duty and self-preservation? At the nurse's station, Sarah mechanically filled out forms, signed her name a dozen times, and provided insurance information. The administrative details were almost a relief, something concrete to focus on instead of the emotional tornado inside her. "Ms. Johnson?" A man's voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see a tall, well-dressed man with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He wasn't wearing hospital scrubs or a white coat, and his expensive suit seemed out of place among the nursing home staff. "Yes?" she replied, confused. "I'm Martin Wells, your father's attorney." He offered his hand. "I was hoping to catch you here today." Sarah shook his hand automatically, her mind struggling to process this new information. "My father's attorney?" I didn't know he had one. Martin Wells raised an eyebrow slightly. Mr. Johnson has been my client for over 20 years. There must be some mistake, Sarah said. My father is a retired carpenter. He doesn't have... She gestured vaguely at the man's expensive suit and leather briefcase. Wells glanced around the busy nurses' station. Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private. Sarah followed him to a small visitor's lounge, currently empty except for a television quietly playing a game show no one was watching. She sat on the edge of a faded armchair, her purse clutched tightly in her lap. Ms. Johnson, I understand this is a difficult day for you, Wells began, but there are some matters regarding your father's estate that require attention. Estate? Sarah almost laughed. My father lived, in a modest 3-bedroom house that's been remortgaged twice to pay for his medical bills. There is no estate. Wells removed a document from his briefcase and slid it across the coffee table toward her. This is a copy of the letter I sent to your home address last month. Did you receive it? Sarah vaguely remembered seeing an envelope with a law firm's logo among her mail. She'd set it aside, assuming it was related to her father's mounting medical bills, or perhaps some paperwork for the power of attorney she'd been granted after his condition worsened. I might have, she admitted. Things have been hectic. I understand. Wells nodded sympathetically. The letter was to inform you that as your father's health has declined, certain provisions in his estate planning have been activated. Mr. Johnson was very specific about his wishes. Sarah picked up the document, but found herself unable to focus on the legal jargon swimming before her eyes. I don't understand. What provisions? What estate planning? Your father has substantial assets that require management, Wells explained, his tone matter of fact. He's named you as the primary beneficiary and, potentially, the successor to his business interests. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Business interests? My father has been on disability since his accident. Before that, he worked for Johnson Custom Carpentry. Small jobs, home renovations, there's no business. Wells removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully with a handkerchief. Ms. Johnson, are you familiar with Johnson Motors? The car dealership? Everyone in town knows it. What does that have to do with my father? Your father doesn't just work for Johnson Motors, Wells said carefully. He owns it. Sarah stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When none came, she shook her head. That's impossible. My father is Frank Johnson, not that Johnson. I assure you, Ms. Johnson, your father is indeed that Johnson. He's the majority shareholder and CEO of Johnson Motors, which has grown considerably beyond a single dealership. The company now includes 12 locations across 3 states, a luxury car service division, and a recently launched custom design department. Sarah felt like she'd stepped into someone else's life. If what you're saying is true, and I'm not convinced it is, why would he keep this from me? Why would he let me believe we were struggling financially? Why would he agree to be placed in a nursing home when he could afford private care? Wells returned his glasses to his face. Those are questions only your father can answer. My role is simply to inform you of the legal situation and your responsibilities going forward. Responsibilities? Sarah echoed faintly. As I mentioned, your father named you as his successor. With his health declining, the board of directors needs guidance on several pending decisions. There's also the matter of the new model launch next month. Sarah stood abruptly. This is crazy. I need to talk to my father. Of course, Wells agreed, standing as well. He handed her a business card. When you're ready to discuss the details, please call my office. There's a considerable amount of information you'll need to review. Sarah took the card automatically, her mind racing. I need to go. She hurried back toward room 215, her thoughts in chaos. This had to be some kind of mistake or misunderstanding. Her father, the quiet, reserved man who'd lived modestly his entire life, secretly running a multi-million-dollar car company? It was absurd. But as she approached her father's room, she slowed her pace. Through the partially open door, she could see Frank sitting by the window, looking out at the garden as promised. His profile was outlined against the late afternoon light, proud and somehow regal despite his diminished condition. For the first time, Sarah noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, a detail that had never registered before. Had it always been there? What else had she failed to see? She thought back to her childhood, to the frequent business trips her father took, to the long hours he spent at the workshop, to the careful way he always separated his work life from his home life. She remembered how he'd insisted she learn about cars, teaching her to distinguish engine sounds, to appreciate fine craftsmanship. "It's just practical knowledge," he'd told her when she'd complained about spending Saturdays in greasy garages. "Everyone should know how things work." Had those lessons been more purposeful than she'd realized? Sarah pushed the door open fully and entered the room. Frank turned from the window, and for a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. A sharpness, an awareness that belied his seemingly frail condition. "Dad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you? Really?" Frank Johnson looked at his daughter for a long moment, then turned back to the window. But in that brief glance, Sarah had seen something she'd missed for years, the calculating gaze of a businessman hidden behind the mask of a simple carpenter. Outside the nursing home, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Sarah sat in her car, unable to start the engine, the business card from Martin Wells burning a hole in her pocket. Whatever life she'd thought she had, whatever truth she'd believed, had just been shattered. And somewhere in room 215, a man she thought she knew was keeping secrets that were only beginning to unravel. Sarah sat in her car in the nursing home parking lot for over an hour. The conversation with Martin Wells had turned her world upside down. She stared at his business card, reading the embossed text over and over. Martin Wells, senior partner, Wells and Blackwood Attorneys at Law. Below that, in smaller print, representing Johnson Motors since 1995. Rain began to tap on the windshield, matching the rhythm of her racing heart. She finally started the engine and drove home in a daze, barely noticing the familiar streets of her hometown. Her small two-bedroom house felt emptier than usual when she arrived. For the past 3 years, this had been her father's home too. His recliner still sat by the window in the living room. His coffee mug, "World's Greatest Dad," in faded letters, remained on the kitchen counter. Sarah dropped her purse on the table and began searching through the stack of mail she'd been ignoring. Bills, advertisements, more bills. Then she found it. The envelope from Wells and Blackwood, unopened. She tore it open and pulled out the letter, her hands shaking slightly. The legal language was confusing, but the main points were clear enough. Her father, Frank Johnson, was indeed the owner and CEO of Johnson Motors. The company had grown significantly over the past decade. Due to his declining health, certain measures needed to be taken to ensure the company's continued operation. As his only child, Sarah was named as his successor, pending certain conditions. "This can't be real," she muttered, letting the papers fall to the table. She grabbed her laptop and searched for Johnson Motors. The company website appeared immediately, sleek and professional, showcasing luxury vehicles that cost more than her annual salary as an elementary school teacher. There was a page about the company's history, founded by Frank's grandfather in 1952 as a single car dealership. It mentioned how Frank had taken over in the 1990s and expanded the business, but there were no photos of him, nothing to connect the frail man in the nursing home with this successful enterprise. Sarah clicked on Executive Team and found photos and biographies of various vice presidents and managers, but no mention of Frank Johnson. It was as if the owner of the company was deliberately staying out of the spotlight. Her phone rang, startling her. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Ms. Johnson, this is Jack Porter from Johnson Motors." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Mr. Wells gave it to me. I hope that's all right." His voice was deep and confident. I understand you've just learned about your father's connection to our company. I'm still trying to process it all, Sarah admitted. It seems unbelievable. I can imagine, Porter replied. Your father is a very private man. Most of the employees don't even know who he is. And who are you exactly? I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I've been working with your father for the past 8 years, helping to run the day-to-day operations while he managed the bigger picture. Sarah paced around her kitchen. So you knew my father was living here with me? You knew about his health problems? Yes, Porter said simply. He kept me informed. And you knew he was going to a nursing home today? There was a brief pause. Yes, Frank told me his plans. The casual use of her father's first name irritated Sarah. This stranger seemed to know more about her father than she did. Mr. Porter. Jack, please. Mr. Porter, she repeated firmly. I don't mean to be rude, but this is a lot to take in. I need some time to think. Of course, but there are some pressing matters that require attention. The company is at a critical point right now. We're about to launch a new line of vehicles, and several important decisions need to be made. That has nothing to do with me. Porter's voice took on a more serious tone. Actually, it has everything to do with you. According to your father's wishes, you're now in a position to take over his responsibilities. Sarah laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. I'm an elementary school teacher. I know nothing about running a car company. Your father believed you could learn. He's been preparing for this for years. Preparing? By telling me absolutely nothing. Sarah's voice rose in frustration. I just put him in a nursing home because I couldn't afford in-home care. Do you have any idea how that feels? To think you're doing what's necessary, only to find out it was all based on lies? Porter was quiet for a moment. I understand this is difficult, but your father had his reasons for keeping you separate from the business world. He wanted to protect you. From what? The pressure, the scrutiny, the people who would use you to get to him. Porter paused. Your father has made some powerful enemies over the years, people who would have targeted you if they knew how important you were to him. Sarah sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. This is like something out of a movie. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow, if possible, Porter continued. I can explain more in person, show you the company headquarters. It might help make this more real for you. Part of Sarah wanted to refuse, to pretend none of this was happening, but a growing curiosity pushed her forward. Fine. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Perfect. I'll text you the address. After hanging up, Sarah wandered into her father's old room. She'd cleared most of his personal items when packing for the nursing home, but his desk remained untouched. It was an old roll-top desk that had been in the family for generations. Frank had always kept it locked, claiming it held boring paperwork. Sarah ran her fingers along the smooth wood surface. Had there been clues all along that she'd missed? Signs that her quiet, seemingly ordinary father was leading a double life. On impulse, she tried the roll top. To her surprise, it slid up smoothly. The desk wasn't locked. Inside were neat stacks of papers, folders, and a small laptop she'd never seen before. Sarah pulled out the laptop and opened it. It required a password. She tried several combinations: her birthday, her mother's name, the date of her parents' anniversary. But nothing worked. Frustrated, she turned to the papers. Most were in folders labeled with dates going back several years. She opened the most recent one and found detailed reports about Johnson Motors, sales figures, expansion plans, design concepts for new vehicles. Buried among the business documents, Sarah found something unexpected: a personal journal. The leather-bound book was well worn, with her father's initials embossed on the cover. She hesitated before opening it, feeling like an intruder in her father's private thoughts. But the need to understand overrode her hesitation. She opened the journal to a random page from 3 years ago. Linda has been gone for 3 years now. The house feels empty without her. Sarah tries her best to help, but I can see the burden I've become. She shouldn't have to deal with this. She has her own life to live. Sometimes I think about telling her everything, bringing her into the company like I always planned. But after seeing what this business did to Linda and me, the constant pressure, the threats, the sacrifices, I can't do that to Sarah. She deserves better. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She turned to a more recent entry, dated just last month. Jack thinks I'm making a mistake by not telling Sarah about the company. Maybe he's right. But I've protected her for so long. The nursing home plan is in place. It's for the best. Once I'm gone, the truth will come out gradually. Martin will handle everything. Sarah is stronger than she knows. When the time comes, she'll understand why I kept her away from this world. Sarah closed the journal, her mind spinning with questions. What sacrifices had her parents made? What threats had they faced? And what had her father meant by, "when I'm gone"? She picked up her phone and dialed the nursing home. "I'd like to speak to my father, Frank Johnson, in room 215, she said when the receptionist answered. "One moment, please." After a long pause, the receptionist returned. "I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, but your father has asked not to be disturbed this evening. The nurse says he's taken his medication and is resting." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "Please tell him it's urgent. I need to speak with him." "I understand, but he was very clear about not wanting any calls or visitors tonight. Perhaps you could try again tomorrow." Frustrated, Sarah hung up. She stared at the pile of documents on the desk, then at her father's journal. There were answers here, but not enough to complete the puzzle. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Jack Porter. "Johnson Motors Headquarters, 1580 Industrial Parkway, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Looking forward to meeting you. There's much to discuss." Below the text was a photo of a sleek, modern building with the Johnson Motors logo prominently displayed at the entrance. It looked nothing like the small local dealership she'd driven past countless times. This was the headquarters of a major corporation, hidden in plain sight on the outskirts of town. Sarah spent a restless night, her sleep interrupted by strange dreams where her father stood at the head of a boardroom, commanding an empire, while she watched from outside, face pressed against the glass, invisible and forgotten. The next morning, she dressed with unusual care, choosing a simple navy blue dress and low heels, teacher clothes, professional but not flashy. She had no idea what to expect at Johnson Motors, but she was determined to get answers. The headquarters was a 30-minute drive from her house, located in an industrial area she rarely visited. As she pulled into the parking lot, her stomach tightened with anxiety. The building was even more impressive in person, all glass and steel, with a fountain in front featuring a sculpture of the company's logo. A security guard approached as she parked. "Ma'am, can I help you?" "I'm Sarah Johnson. I have an appointment with Jack Porter." The guard's demeanor changed instantly. "Miss Johnson." "Yes, of course. Mr. Porter is expecting you. Please follow me." Sarah followed him through automatic glass doors into a lobby that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, sleek furniture, and a massive reception desk staffed by two professionally dressed women. "Good morning, Ms. Johnson." One of the receptionists greeted her with a warm smile. "Mr. Porter will be with you shortly. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be nice, thank you," Sarah replied, feeling increasingly out of place. She sat in a plush chair, sipping her water and watching employees come and go. They all seemed purposeful, confident, dressed in expensive suits and carrying leather briefcases. Was this really her father's world? The same man who wore flannel shirts and jeans, who drove a 10-year-old pickup truck. Sarah Johnson. She looked up to see a tall man with dark hair streaked with gray at the temples. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit and a friendly smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. This had to be Jack Porter. "Mr. Porter," she acknowledged, standing to shake his hand. "Jack, please," he insisted, his grip firm. "It's wonderful to finally meet you in person. Your father has told me so much about you." "Funny, he never mentioned you at all," Sarah replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Porter's smile didn't waver. Yes, well, that's Frank, always compartmentalizing. He gestured toward a corridor. Shall we talk in my office? I think you'll have questions, and I have much to show you. Sarah followed him through a maze of hallways and past glass-walled offices where people worked at computers or held meetings. Employees nodded respectfully as Porter passed, several doing double takes when they saw Sarah. Porter's office was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the test track behind the building. Sleek prototype cars could be seen running through their paces in the distance. Please, sit, Porter said, indicating a leather chair across from his desk. Sarah sat, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. I want to know everything. The truth about my father, this company, and why I was kept in the dark all these years. Porter studied her for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. But before I answer those questions, there's something I need to show you. He turned his computer monitor so Sarah could see it and pressed a key. The screen showed a security camera feed of a hospital room, her father's room at the nursing home. Except Frank wasn't there. Where is he? Sarah demanded, leaning forward. That's the question of the hour, Porter replied, his expression grave. Your father checked himself out of the nursing home late last night. No one knows where he's gone. What do you mean he's gone? Sarah stood up, her heart racing. He can barely move without help. How could he just check himself out? Jack Porter's expression remained neutral. Your father is a resourceful man. His physical limitations are, well, let's just say they might not be as severe as they appear. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. Are you telling me he's been faking his disability? Not faking, exactly, Porter replied carefully. The accident 6 years ago was real. The initial paralysis was real. But Frank made a more substantial recovery than he let on. He maintained the wheelchair as a convenience. A convenience? Sarah's voice rose. I've been bathing him, helping him dress, cooking his meals for years. How is that convenient? Porter looked uncomfortable for the first time. It served his purposes. It kept him under the radar. Under the radar from what? Sarah demanded. Porter walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Your father built this company from a small-town dealership into one of the most innovative automotive firms in the country. That kind of success creates enemies, competitors who want his technology, his designs, his market share. He turned to face her. 3 years ago, there was an attempt to take over Johnson Motors by force. A larger company tried to buy up enough shares to gain control. When that failed, there were other tactics. Your mother's car accident wasn't really an accident. Sarah felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. What are you saying? The brake lines were cut. It was meant to look like a mechanical failure, and it did. The police investigation found nothing suspicious. But your father hired private investigators who discovered the truth. Porter's voice softened. By the time he knew, Linda was already gone. After that, Frank became obsessed with protecting you. He cultivated the image of a disabled, retiring man who was gradually stepping away from his company. He maintained the facade of a modest lifestyle to keep you both off the radar. Sarah sank back into her chair, trying to process this information. Her mother's death, which had devastated their family, had been deliberate. A business tactic. It seemed too horrible to believe. Who? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Who did this to my mother? A company called Magna Industries. Their CEO, Richard Vance, has wanted to acquire Johnson Motors for years. Your father has repeatedly refused to sell. Sarah tried to connect the dots. So, my father has been pretending to be more disabled than he is, hiding his wealth, keeping me in the dark about everything, all to protect me from this Richard Vance. Essentially, yes. If Vance believed you were important to the company's future, you might have become a target too. Sarah shook her head, overwhelmed. This is insane. It's like something out of a crime novel. The business world can be ruthless, especially when billions of dollars are at stake. Porter sat on the edge of his desk. Your father believed that keeping you separate from Johnson Motors was the only way to keep you safe. But now, with the company on the verge of a major breakthrough, he needs you. Needs me? For what? I don't know the first thing about cars or running a business. Porter's expression turned serious. Johnson Motors is about to launch a revolutionary new vehicle, one that could transform the entire industry. It's a luxury electric car with capabilities no other manufacturer has achieved. Your father has been working on this project personally for years. The unveiling is scheduled for next month's International Auto Show. Sarah tried to imagine her father, the quiet man who spent hours in his wheelchair staring out windows, secretly designing cutting-edge cars. It seemed impossible to reconcile these two different images of Frank Johnson. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, she said. The company bylaws, which Frank wrote himself, state that in his absence, control passes to his designated successor, you. But only if you formally accept the position within 30 days of his incapacitation. Porter chose his words carefully. By checking himself out of the nursing home, your father has essentially triggered that clause. You now have 30 days to decide whether to take over Johnson Motors. And if I don't? The company will be sold to the highest bidder. Given our current position in the market, that would almost certainly be Magna Industries. Sarah stood up again, needing to move. So, my father disappears, forcing me to either take over a company I know nothing about or let it fall into the hands of the people who killed my mother. Her voice cracked with emotion. How is that protecting me? Porter spread his hands in a helpless gesture. Frank's methods are unconventional, but he believes you're ready for this. He's been preparing you in subtle ways your whole life. What are you talking about? Those weekend projects where he taught you about engines, the summer you spent helping out at the local dealership, the business books he always recommended, even your mother's old car that he insisted you learn to maintain yourself. All of it was training in his way. Sarah remembered those experiences, how her father had patiently explained how each part of an engine worked, how he'd insisted she understand the basics of business accounting when she was still in high school, claiming it would help with her math classes. At the time, it had seemed like normal fatherly guidance. Now, it took on a new meaning. I need to find him, she said firmly. Before I make any decisions, I need to talk to him face to face. Porter nodded. I thought you might say that. That's why I've already put our security team on it. They're checking his usual places, his old contacts. If Frank is in the city, we'll find him. I want to help, Sarah insisted. I know things about my father that your security team doesn't. Fair enough. Where would you suggest we look? Sarah thought for a moment. The old workshop behind my grandparents' house. Dad spent a lot of time there when I was growing up. It's been abandoned for years, but he kept the key on his ring. Porter raised an eyebrow. Good thinking. I'll have someone check it out right away. No, Sarah said firmly. I'll go myself. If he's there, he'll be more likely to talk to me than to some security guard he doesn't know. Porter hesitated, then nodded. All right, but take this. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small device that looked like a key fob. It's a panic button. Press it 3 times and security will come running, just in case. Sarah took it reluctantly. You really think I might be in danger? I think we can't be too careful, not with Richard Vance circling like a shark. She slipped the device into her pocket. Before I go, I want to see it. See what? This revolutionary car my father has been working on, the one worth killing for. Porter smiled for the first time since showing her the empty hospital room. I was hoping you'd ask. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Jenny, have Robert meet us in the secure design studio. 10 minutes later, Sarah found herself entering a restricted area of the building. She had to pass through 2 security checkpoints and sign a confidentiality agreement before Porter led her into a large, open space filled with drafting tables, computers, and various car parts. At the center of the room, covered by a black cloth, was a car-shaped form. A tall, thin man with glasses approached them. "Mr. Porter, good morning. Is this—" "Sarah Johnson, Frank's daughter," Porter confirmed. "Sarah, this is Robert Chen, our lead design engineer. He's been working with your father on Project Lightning." "Project Lightning?" Sarah repeated. Robert smiled eagerly. "Your father's pet name for it, because of the electricity, you see, and because of the speed. It's very clever." "Robert," Porter interrupted gently, "would you do the honors?" "Of course." Robert hurried to the covered car. "Ms. Johnson, may I present the future of Johnson Motors?" He pulled away the black cloth to reveal a sleek silver vehicle unlike any car Sarah had seen before. It was low to the ground, with smooth lines that seemed to flow from front to back. There were no visible door handles, no side mirrors, and the front had no traditional grille. "It's beautiful," Sarah admitted, "but what makes it so special?" Robert launched into an enthusiastic explanation. "The Lightning is fully electric, with a range of over 500 miles on a single charge. It can recharge to 80% capacity in just 15 minutes using our proprietary charging system. It goes from 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. But the truly revolutionary aspect is the autonomous driving capability." He opened the car door, revealing an interior without a steering wheel. Instead, there was a curved screen that wrapped around the dashboard. "The Lightning can navigate any road in any weather condition with greater safety than a human driver," Robert continued. "It uses a combination of cameras, radar, and our patented AI system. Your father developed the core algorithm himself." Sarah peered into the car, trying to imagine her father, the man she thought was a simple carpenter, creating something so advanced. When did he find time to do all this? Porter and Robert exchanged glances. "Your father has been working on this project for over a decade," Robert explained. "Most of the design work was done remotely, especially after his accident. He would send me encrypted files with updates and modifications. I've only met him in person a handful of times." Sarah ran her hand along the smooth metal of the car's surface. "And this is what everyone wants? This is what Magna Industries would kill for?" "The Lightning itself is valuable," Porter said, "but what everyone really wants is the technology behind it. Your father's AI system is years ahead of anything else on the market. The company that controls this technology will dominate the automotive industry for the next decade at least." Sarah stepped back from the car, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation. Her father had created something revolutionary, something worth billions, while living in her small house, pretending to be more disabled than he was, all to keep her safe from people who wanted what he had. "I need some time to think," she said, "and I need to find my father." "Of course," Porter agreed. "Take my card. Call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything." He handed her a sleek business card with his cell phone number handwritten on the back. "And Sarah, be careful. Vance has eyes everywhere." The drive to her grandparents' old house took nearly an hour. It was located outside of town, a small farmhouse that had been in the family for generations. No one had lived there since her grandmother died 10 years ago, but her father had maintained the property, paying taxes and hiring a service to mow the lawn occasionally. As Sarah pulled up the gravel driveway, memories flooded back. Summer afternoons picking apples in the small orchard, helping her grandfather tend his vegetable garden, watching her father work for hours in the detached workshop behind the house. The workshop was a large shed with windows on all sides. Her grandfather had built it as a place to repair farm equipment, but her father had transformed it into a personal workspace. As a child, Sarah had spent countless hours there, watching him work on various projects, sometimes helping, sometimes just keeping him company. She parked beside the house and walked around to the back, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The workshop looked the same as she remembered. Weathered grey boards, slightly crooked door, small porch with a rocking chair that had seen better days. There were no cars visible, no signs that anyone was here. But as Sarah approached, she noticed something unusual. The windows, which should have been dusty and cobwebbed after years of disuse, were clean. Someone had been here recently. She climbed the 3 steps to the porch and tried the door. It was locked. From her purse, she took the spare keyring she'd found in her father's desk drawer. There were several keys, and she tried each one until she found the one that fit. The door creaked open, and Sarah stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The workshop was larger than she remembered, with workbenches along the walls and various tools hanging from hooks. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, except for one area in the back corner. There, a desk had been set up with a computer, papers spread out neatly, and a lamp that was still warm to the touch. Someone had been here very recently. "Dad?" Sarah called out. "Are you here?" No answer. She approached the desk cautiously. The papers were technical drawings, complex diagrams that meant nothing to her. The computer was password protected, just like the laptop she'd found at home. A small leather notebook lay open beside the computer. Sarah recognized her father's handwriting immediately. April 28th. Security protocols updated. S has been informed by Martin. 30-day clock starts tomorrow. Jack will guide her. The lightning is ready. Need to finalize the transition plan before the auto show. V is watching closely. Changed hotels again today. Can't risk being tracked. Sarah's heart beat faster. This note was dated just 2 days ago. Her father had been here, planning whatever game he was playing, referring to her as simply S in his notes. A sudden noise from outside made her freeze. Footsteps on the gravel path. Someone was approaching the workshop. Sarah looked around frantically for a place to hide, but before she could move, the door swung open. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the afternoon light. "I've been expecting you," said a familiar voice. But it wasn't her father. Richard Vance stepped into the workshop, closing the door behind him. He was exactly as Sarah had imagined from Porter's description, expensively dressed, with the confident bearing of a man used to getting his way. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his smile never reached his cold grey eyes. "Sarah Johnson," he said smoothly. "We meet at last. I've heard so much about you." Sarah backed up against the desk, her hand reaching for the panic button in her pocket. "How did you know I'd be here?" Vance chuckled. "I've had people watching your father's properties for years. When you suddenly showed up at Johnson Motors headquarters this morning, then drove directly here, well, it wasn't hard to connect the dots." "What do you want?" Sarah tried to keep her voice steady. "The same thing I've wanted for years. Johnson Motors, your father's technology." Vance took a step closer. "But now, I want something else too. I want to know where Frank is hiding." "I don't know," Sarah replied truthfully. "I'm looking for him too." Vance studied her face. "I believe you. Frank has always been secretive, even with those closest to him. It's what makes him such a formidable opponent." He gestured around the workshop. "Did you find anything useful here?" Sarah's mind raced. Should she mention the notebook? The computer? Or would that just put her father in more danger? "Nothing," she lied. "Just some old tools and furniture." Vance's eyes narrowed. "I don't think you're being entirely honest with me, Ms. Johnson, but that's all right. We have time to get to know each other better." He took another step toward her. Sarah's fingers closed around the panic button in her pocket. 3 clicks would bring help, Porter had said. But would they arrive in time? And how did she know she could trust Porter any more than she could trust Vance? "Your father has put you in an impossible position," Vance continued. "He's left you to run a company you know nothing about to protect technology you don't understand, against people you've never met." He shook his head. "It's cruel, really." "Why did you kill my mother?" Sarah asked abruptly, needing to know. Vance's expression didn't change. "Business is war, Miss Johnson. There are casualties in war. Your mother was collateral damage, nothing personal." Sarah felt a cold fury building inside her. This man spoke about her mother's murder as if it were a business transaction, a necessary cost of doing business. "It was personal to me," she said quietly. "It was personal to my father." "Yes, I suppose it was." Vance sighed. Frank took it rather badly, disappeared from public view, cultivated that pathetic disabled persona, all very dramatic. He moved closer until he was standing right in front of her. "But now he's shown his hand. He's back in the game. And he's made you a player whether you wanted to be or not." Sarah's back was against the desk now, with nowhere else to retreat. "What do you want from me?" "Your signature, to start with," Vance replied casually. "On papers, transferring control of Johnson Motors to Magna Industries. Sign now for a very generous compensation package, and this all goes away. You go back to your teaching job, live comfortably, and never have to worry about the ruthless world your father inhabits." "And if I refuse?" Vance's smile turned cold. "Then things get complicated. For you. For your father, when I find him. For everyone at Johnson Motors who remains loyal to the Johnson family." Sarah felt a strange calm settle over her. Throughout this bizarre day, she had felt confused, angry, betrayed. But now, facing her mother's killer, hearing his threats, something shifted inside her. A clarity of purpose she hadn't felt before. She straightened her back and looked Vance directly in the eyes. "My father may have kept secrets from me. He may have lied and manipulated me. But he did it to protect me from people like you. People who think that money and power give them the right to take whatever they want, to hurt whoever stands in their way." Vance's expression hardened. "Pretty words, Ms. Johnson, but they won't help you run a multi-billion-dollar company. They won't protect you from the realities of the business world." "Maybe not," Sarah agreed. "But they remind me of who I am. I am Frank Johnson's daughter. And I will never, ever sign anything that gives you what you want." For a moment, Vance looked genuinely surprised. Then he laughed. Well, it seems Frank was right about you after all. You have his spine." His face turned serious again. "But that won't save you. You have 30 days to accept your position as CEO. After that, the board will be forced to consider outside offers, and I will be waiting." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Ms. Johnson, I'll be watching you. Every move, every decision. When you find your father, and I know you will, tell him Richard Vance sends his regards." The door closed behind him, and Sarah heard his footsteps receding, then the sound of a car starting and driving away. Her legs suddenly weak, Sarah sank into the chair by the desk. Her hand was still clutching the panic button, knuckles white from the pressure. She had been one moment away from pressing it, from calling for help that might not have arrived in time. She looked down at her father's notebook again, at the cryptic notes about security protocols and transition plans. The last line caught her eye again. "V is watching closely. Changed hotels again today. Can't risk being tracked." Hotels. Her father was staying in hotels, changing locations frequently to avoid being found. But which hotels? There were dozens in the city and surrounding areas. Sarah flipped through the notebook, looking for more clues. Most pages contained technical notes or business observations. Nothing personal. But near the back, she found something interesting, a receipt tucked between the pages. It was from a coffee shop called The Daily Grind, located in the downtown area, dated yesterday morning. A coffee shop receipt wasn't much to go on, but it was a start. If her father had been there yesterday, perhaps someone remembered him. It was a lead, and right now, that was all she had. Sarah tucked the notebook into her purse and left the workshop, making sure to lock the door behind her. As she walked back to her car, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Vance had said he would be watching her every move. How many eyes did he have? How many people were reporting back to him? She got into her car and sat for a moment, trying to organize her thoughts. In the span of 2 days, her entire life had been turned upside down. She had discovered that her father was not the man she thought he was, that her mother's death was no accident, and that she was now at the center of a high-stakes business war she never asked to be part of. As Sarah started the engine, her phone rang. The display showed Johnson Motors. She answered cautiously. "Sarah, it's Jack Porter. Where are you? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she replied, not entirely sure if she could trust him. "I'm at my grandparents' old place. Dad's been here recently, but he's gone now." "Did you find anything? Any clue where he might be?" Sarah hesitated, then made a decision. "Nothing useful. Just some old tools and papers. Nothing recent." The same lie she had told Vance. Until she knew who she could trust, she would keep her father's notebook to herself. "I see." Porter sounded disappointed. "Well, our security team has been checking hotels in the area. No luck so far. I'm going to keep looking," Sarah said. "I'll call you if I find anything." She hung up before Porter could ask more questions. Starting the car, she pulled out of the driveway and headed toward downtown. The Daily Grind coffee shop was her only lead, and time was running out. As she drove, Sarah glanced at her father's notebook on the passenger seat. Somewhere in those pages might be the key to finding Frank Johnson, and when she found him, she had some very serious questions to ask. Behind her, a black car pulled out onto the road, maintaining a discreet distance as it followed her toward the city. The Daily Grind coffee shop was busy when Sarah arrived. The afternoon crowd filled most of the tables, students with laptops, business people holding meetings, friends chatting over steaming mugs. Sarah approached the counter, where a young barista with blue-tipped hair greeted her with a practiced smile. "What can I get for you today?" Sarah pulled out the receipt from her purse. "Actually, I'm looking for someone who might have been here yesterday morning. An older man, white hair, possibly using a cane." She hesitated to mention the wheelchair, remembering what Porter had said about her father's condition being somewhat exaggerated. The barista shook her head. "I wasn't working yesterday morning. Let me ask Miguel. He was on the early shift." She called over a young man who was restocking the pastry case. "Miguel, this lady's looking for someone who came in yesterday morning. Older guy, white hair, cane?" Miguel studied Sarah's face. "You're his daughter, aren't you? You have the same eyes." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, I'm looking for my father. He was here?" Miguel nodded. "Yeah, he's been coming in for the past week or so. Always sits at that table in the corner." He pointed to a small table partially hidden by a decorative plant. "Keeps to himself, works on his laptop, left a good tip." "Was he here today?" Sarah asked hopefully. "No, haven't seen him since yesterday. He seemed kind of on edge when he left, kept looking out the window like he was watching for someone." Sarah felt a mix of disappointment and hope. Her father had established a routine here, which meant he might come back. "If he comes in again, could you tell him his daughter is looking for him? It's important." "Sure thing," Miguel agreed. "Want me to call you if he shows up?" Sarah wrote her phone number on a napkin and handed it to him. "Thank you. This means a lot to me." She ordered a coffee and took a seat at her father's preferred table. From here, she had a good view of both the front door and the side exit, as well as the street outside. A strategic location, she realized. Her father could see anyone coming or going, but was partially hidden from view himself. Sarah opened the notebook again, flipping through pages of technical notes and business jargon she didn't understand. Near the back, she found more recent entries. April 25th, confirmed unveiling date for the Lightning. Hotel security compromised, moving again tonight. April 26th, met with J, reviewed contingency plans. S will need guidance. The board is nervous, but holding steady. J must be Jack Porter, Sarah reasoned. And she was S. Reading these cryptic notes felt like eavesdropping on a stranger, not her own father. How could she have lived with him for years and known so little about his real life? Sarah continued reading. April 27th. Surveillance noted outside the Daily Grind. Possible Magna operatives. Need new meeting location. Left package with M for safekeeping. M? Who was M? The only M she could think of was Miguel, the barista who had recognized her. Could her father have left something with him? Sarah was about to return to the counter when a new customer entered the coffee shop. She froze. It was Jack Porter, scanning the room with a purposeful expression. Had he followed her here? She ducked her head, pretending to be absorbed in her coffee, but it was too late. Porter had spotted her and was walking directly toward her table. "Fancy meeting you here," he said, sliding into the chair opposite her. Sarah closed the notebook casually, trying to keep her expression neutral. "How did you find me?" Porter shrugged. "GPS tracking on the panic button I gave you. Standard security protocol." Sarah felt a flush of anger. "You've been tracking me this whole time?" "For your own protection," Porter replied smoothly. "After your encounter with Vance at the workshop, yes, we know about that too, I thought it prudent to keep closer tabs on you." Sarah's mind raced. If Porter knew about Vance, then he must have been watching the workshop too. How much had he overheard? How much did he know about what she'd found? "I don't need a babysitter," she said coldly. "No, but you might need backup." Porter nodded toward the window. "The black sedan across the street has been following you since you left your grandparents' property, Magna Industries' security team, and they're not the only ones watching you." Sarah glanced outside and saw the black car Porter mentioned. A chill ran down her spine. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because despite what you might think, I'm on your side. Your father hired me 10 years ago specifically to help protect his family and his company. I've been loyal to him ever since." "Then where is he?" Sarah demanded. "Why is he hiding instead of explaining all this to me himself?" Porter sighed. "Frank has his reasons. He always does. Sometimes they only make sense to him." He leaned forward. "But right now, we need to focus on finding him before Vance does. Did you discover anything at the workshop? Anything that might lead us to him?" Sarah hesitated. Porter seemed sincere, but her father's paranoia had rubbed off on her. Who could she really trust in this web of secrets? "The barista recognized him," she admitted finally. "Dad's been coming here regularly for the past week, and he left something with someone named M." Porter frowned. "M? Could be Miguel, the barista. Could be Martin Wells, his attorney. Could be anyone." "I was about to ask Miguel when you arrived." Porter nodded. "Let's do that." He stood up and walked to the counter with Sarah. Miguel looked up as they approached. "Find what you're looking for?" "Not yet," Sarah said, "but I have another question. Did my father leave anything with you? A package or a message?" Miguel's friendly expression closed off immediately. "I don't know what you're talking about." Porter stepped forward. "It's important. Mr. Johnson might be in danger." "Look, I just make coffee, okay?" Miguel said defensively. "I don't get involved in whatever else is going on." Sarah studied his face. He was lying. She could tell from the way he avoided eye contact, the nervous tap of his fingers against the counter. "Please," she said quietly. "He's my father. I'm worried about him." Miguel glanced around, then sighed. "He said you might come looking. Said I should ask for ID before giving you anything." Sarah pulled out her driver's license and showed it to him. Miguel examined it carefully, then nodded. "Wait here." He disappeared into the back room and returned a moment later with a small padded envelope. "He left this 2 days ago. Said to give it only to you, and only if you came asking on your own." Sarah took the envelope. It was sealed, with no writing on the outside. "Thank you." "There's more," Miguel added. "He said to tell you, The green bench, 7 p.m. That's it. Sarah's pulse quickened. The green bench. She knew exactly what that meant. There was a distinctive green bench in the park where her father used to take her as a child. It was their special meeting spot whenever they got separated. Today, she asked. Miguel shrugged. He didn't say. Just the green bench, 7 p.m. Sarah checked her watch. It was already 5:30. If her father meant today, she had less than 2 hours to get to the park. Thank you, she said again, then turned to Porter. I need to go. I'm coming with you, Porter insisted. No, Sarah said firmly. I need to do this alone. My father obviously wanted to meet me privately, or he would have been more direct. Porter looked like he wanted to argue, but then nodded reluctantly. At least let me drive you to your car and make sure you're not followed. The black sedan is still out there. Sarah agreed, and they left through the coffee shop's side exit, circling around the block to avoid being seen from the street. Porter's own car was parked nearby, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. Take this, he said, handing her a small earpiece. It's a secure communication device. If you get into trouble, just say code blue and we'll come running. Sarah slipped the device into her pocket alongside the panic button. You're very prepared. It's my job to be prepared. Your father pays me well for it. They drove in silence to where Sarah had parked her car. No sign of the black sedan that had been following her. They probably went back to the coffee shop looking for you, Porter said. But they'll be watching the park too if they know about your father's habits. Be careful, Sarah. I will. She got out of the SUV but paused before closing the door. Thank you, Jack. Porter smiled. Just doing my job. And Sarah, whatever your father tells you, remember that he loves you. Everything he's done, all the secrets, the deception, it came from a place of love. Sarah nodded, not entirely convinced, and closed the door. She watched Porter drive away, then got into her own car. Before starting the engine, she opened the padded envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. Sarah, if you're reading this, then you've begun to uncover the truth. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was necessary. The flash drive contains everything you need to know about Johnson Motors, the Lightning Project, and why I kept you in the dark all these years. Trust Jack Porter and Martin Wells. No one else. Meet me at our spot. Come alone. Dad Sarah slipped the flash drive into her purse and started the car. She had many questions, and finally, it seemed her father was ready to provide answers. The park was across town, a 30-minute drive in evening traffic. As she drove, Sarah's mind filled with memories of this park. Birthday parties, summer picnics, learning to ride a bike on its winding paths. The green bench had been their special place, where her father would sit and watch her play, where they would eat ice cream on hot days, where they would talk about school and friends and life. She arrived at the park with 15 minutes to spare. The evening was pleasant, with a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the old oak trees. Families were packing up after a day of play, couples strolled hand in hand along the paths, and a few solitary joggers made their final laps around the perimeter. Sarah walked to the green bench, which sat on a small hill overlooking the playground. It was empty. She sat down, her nerves on edge, constantly scanning the area for any sign of her father or of Vance's people. The minutes ticked by slowly. 6:55, 7:05. No sign of Frank Johnson. At 7:10, Sarah began to worry. Had she misunderstood the message? Was her father coming on a different day, or had something happened to him? Then she spotted him, not approaching on the path as she'd expected, but already in the park, sitting in a wheelchair beneath a large oak tree about 50 yards away. He was watching her, his white hair catching the golden light of the setting sun. Sarah stood, her heart pounding. For a moment, she couldn't move. After everything she'd learned, she wasn't sure if she would hug her father or yell at him, but the need to know, to understand, pushed her forward. As she approached, Frank pushed himself up from the wheelchair and stood. He was thinner than she remembered, his face more lined, but he stood straight and steady, no sign of the disability that had defined him for years. "Hello, Sarah," he said softly. "Dad?" Sarah stopped a few feet away from him. "You can walk." "Yes." Frank looked down at his legs, then back at his daughter. "I'm sorry for the deception." "Sorry?" Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. "You've been lying to me for years, pretending to need my help when you didn't, hiding your company, your money, your whole life from me." Frank nodded, accepting her anger. "I know. I've caused you pain, and that was never my intention, but I had my reasons." "Mom's death wasn't an accident," Sarah said. "Porter told me." A shadow crossed Frank's face, a flash of old pain that had never fully healed. "No, it wasn't. Richard Vance had her killed to get to me, to force me to sell Johnson Motors. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why keep me in the dark?" Frank gestured to the bench. "Let's sit. It's a long story." They walked to the green bench together and sat side by side, just as they had hundreds of times over the years. The familiarity of it made the current strangeness even more pronounced. "After your mother died," Frank began, "I was devastated. But I was also terrified. If Vance would kill Linda to get to me, what would stop him from targeting you next? I knew I had to protect you, and the only way to do that was to make both of us disappear from public view. So you faked your disability? Pretended to be struggling financially?" Frank nodded. "The accident gave me the perfect cover. I was injured, but not as severely as I led everyone to believe. I created a new narrative. Frank Johnson, the broken man, slowly fading from relevance. Meanwhile, I continued to run Johnson Motors remotely, developing the Lightning Project, preparing for the day when we could finally defeat Vance." "And where does putting me in charge of your company fit into this plan?" Sarah asked. "I'm a teacher, Dad. I know nothing about running a business." Frank smiled for the first time. "You know more than you think. I've been teaching you all your life, in small ways. But more importantly, you have integrity, intelligence, and determination. Those are qualities that can't be taught." He took her hand in his. "The Lightning Project is almost complete. When it launches next month, it will revolutionize the automotive industry. Johnson Motors will be too valuable for Vance to acquire through normal channels. But if I simply return to the company now, after all these years, he would resort to the same tactics he used before: violence, threats, targeting the people I love." "So you're using me as a shield?" Sarah said bitterly. "No," Frank replied firmly. "I'm giving you your inheritance. Johnson Motors was built by your grandfather, expanded by me, and now it should pass to you. I won't live forever, Sarah. Someone needs to carry on the legacy, to protect what we've built." "But why the elaborate scheme? Why check yourself out of the nursing home? Why the 30-day deadline?" Frank sighed. "I needed to force the issue. As long as I was officially in charge, even from a nursing home bed, the board would remain paralyzed, waiting for my instructions. By removing myself completely, I created a situation where you have to decide. Take control of Johnson Motors or let it fall to Vance." "It's not fair to put that choice on me," Sarah protested. "No, it's not," Frank agreed. "But life rarely gives us fair choices. Sometimes we have to choose between difficult options." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not asking you to decide right now. Take the 30 days, learn about the company, meet the people who work there, then make your choice." Sarah pulled her hand away. "And where will you be during these 30 days? Still hiding?" "I'll be nearby, watching, waiting." "For what?" Frank's expression turned serious. "For Vance to make his move. He won't sit idle while you consider your options. He'll try to pressure you, threaten you, maybe even worse." "He already found me at the workshop," Sarah told him. "He suggested I sign over the company to him." Frank's eyes narrowed. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I would never give him what he wants." A slow smile spread across Frank's face. That's my girl. Despite her anger and confusion, Sarah felt a warmth in her chest at her father's pride. All her life, she had sought his approval, and even now, it still mattered. Dad, I met Richard Vance today. He didn't seem like a monster. Cold, calculating, yes, but capable of murder? Evil rarely announces itself with horns and a pitchfork, Frank said quietly. Vance has destroyed lives, ruined companies, broken laws, all in the pursuit of profit. He hides behind lawyers and corporate structures, but the blood is still on his hands. Sarah thought about Vance's casual dismissal of her mother's death as collateral damage. Perhaps her father was right. I'm still angry with you, she said after a moment. You should have trusted me with the truth. You're right, Frank admitted. I underestimated you. I was so focused on protecting you that I didn't see how strong you've become. He looked at her with new respect. Porter told me how you handled yourself at the company, with the design team, with Vance. You've surprised everyone. Including myself, Sarah murmured. A comfortable silence fell between them as the sun dipped below the horizon. The park had emptied, leaving them alone with the chirping crickets and gentle breeze. What happens now? Sarah finally asked. Now, you go home and review the files on that flash drive. Learn everything you can about Johnson Motors. Visit the company. Talk to the employees. Understand what's at stake. And you? I'll remain in hiding for now. Vance has people watching for me. It's safer this way. Frank stood up. But I'll be in touch. And Sarah, be careful who you trust. Vance has a way of finding people's weaknesses, turning loyal employees into informants. Porter said I should only trust him and Martin Wells. Frank nodded. They've proven their loyalty over years. Jack Porter particularly. He was your mother's cousin. Did you know that? He's been helping me protect you since her death. This was yet another revelation in a day full of them. No, I had no idea. There's a lot you don't know yet, but you will. Frank looked at his watch. I need to go. We've been here too long already. Sarah stood too, feeling a sudden reluctance to part. Despite everything, this was still her father. How will I contact you if I need to? The flash drive has instructions for a secure communication channel. Use only that. Frank hesitated, then opened his arms. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness yet, but I hope someday you'll understand why I did what I did. Sarah stepped into his embrace, feeling the solid strength that had been hidden beneath his frail facade. I'm trying to understand, Dad. I really am. As they separated, Frank reached into his pocket and handed her a small key. For the office at headquarters, my office. It's yours now, if you want it. Sarah took the key, its weight in her palm feeling strangely significant. I haven't decided yet. I know, but I have faith in you, whatever you choose. Frank picked up a walking cane that had been leaning against the bench. Goodbye, Sarah. For now. He walked away, his posture straight and strong, no trace of the disability he had feigned for so long. Sarah watched him go, a stranger, and yet her father, a man she thought she knew, but clearly didn't. As darkness fell over the park, Sarah made her way back to her car. The flash drive felt heavy in her purse, its contents promising answers to questions she was only beginning to formulate. The next 30 days would change her life, one way or another. She could walk away from Johnson Motors, return to her teaching job, and try to forget the world of corporate intrigue and danger her father inhabited. Or she could step into a legacy she never knew was hers, confront Richard Vance, and protect what her family had built over generations. Sarah arrived at her small house, which now felt different, a temporary shelter rather than a permanent home. She made a cup of tea and sat at her kitchen table, inserting the flash drive into her laptop. Hundreds of files appeared on the screen. Financial reports, design schematics, emails, photographs, video recordings. The history of Johnson Motors, the truth about her family, laid bare before her. She opened a video file labeled For Sarah, watch first. Her father's face appeared on the screen, recorded in what looked like a hotel room. Sarah, the recorded Frank began, if you're watching this, then you've discovered the truth about our family, about Johnson Motors, about me. I owe you an explanation, and more importantly, I owe you a choice. The files on this drive will tell you everything you need to know to make that choice. Take your time. Study them carefully. Then decide what kind of life you want. He paused, his expression softening. I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You've grown into a remarkable woman, strong and compassionate like your mother. Whatever you decide about Johnson Motors, I will support you. This burden shouldn't be yours to bear, but circumstances have forced my hand. Frank leaned closer to the camera. One last thing, if you choose to take over the company, be prepared for Vance to fight dirty. He won't stop until he has what he wants. But you won't be alone. Jack Porter, Martin Wells, Robert Chen, and many others at Johnson Motors are loyal to our family. They will stand with you. The video ended, leaving Sarah staring at her own reflection in the dark screen. Outside, the night had fully settled in, stars appearing in the clear sky. Inside, Sarah Johnson sat at her kitchen table, poised on the edge of a decision that would shape not just her future, but the futures of hundreds of employees, the legacy of her family, and the fate of her father's life's work. She opened another file on the drive, the complete designs for the Lightning vehicle, the car that could change everything, her father's vision, potentially her inheritance. For the first time since this strange journey began, Sarah felt a stirring of excitement alongside the apprehension. Could she do this? Could she step into her father's world and not just survive, but thrive? She thought of Richard Vance's cold eyes, his casual dismissal of her mother's murder. She thought of Jack Porter's loyalty, of the pride in her father's voice when she stood up to Vance. Sarah reached for her phone and dialed a number. Jack? It's Sarah Johnson. I've decided to visit the company tomorrow. I want to see everything, meet everyone. She took a deep breath. I want to learn about my father's legacy. I'll arrange everything, Porter replied, unable to hide the satisfaction in his voice. Welcome to Johnson Motors, Ms. Johnson. Sarah hung up and looked around her small kitchen, seeing it with new eyes. This modest home had been a hiding place, a shell to conceal the truth. But she was done hiding. In 30 days, she would either walk away from Johnson Motors forever or step into a role she never imagined for herself. But whatever she decided, she would do it with full knowledge, open eyes, and on her own terms. She began reading the files, absorbing her father's secrets, preparing for whatever came next. Outside her window, a black sedan was parked across the street, its occupants watching her house. And somewhere in the night, Frank Johnson was watching too, waiting to see what his daughter would become. Sarah Johnson, elementary school teacher, daughter of a man she was only beginning to know, potential heir to an empire built on innovation and sacrifice, faced the future with determination and a growing sense of her own strength. The next chapter of her life was just beginning,